Hey, good afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you are in the U.S. I'm Lisa Tate, and I am so happy to be welcoming you all to this great webinar that you'll hear, Patients Helping Patients. I'm also thrilled to be serving as the interim executive director of Heart Valve Voice. But even more exciting than that is that we have over 250 registrants for this webinar, much more than we've ever had before. So obviously a topic of interest to many people. So just a few words about Heart Valve Voice for those of you who are unfamiliar. So we're the only patient-led organization in the country that exclusively focuses on heart valve disease, improving the diagnosis, treatment, and management of the disease. Our mission is to advocate for early detection, meaningful support, and timely access to the right treatment at the right time. Many of you may not know that heart valve disease is significantly underdiagnosed, underrecognized in this country. So both educating the public and a variety of other organizations and leaders is a primary goal for addressing that problem. So I also wanted to give you a couple of examples of our activities because I know things can sound very broad and general. So just a few specifics. So in terms of raising awareness of the symptoms and severity within at-risk and underserved populations, that is a key focus for our organization. So one example is that this year we produced a Spanish language radio PSA, and it got really tremendous airtime. Right now we're working on another PSA for urban radio stations. We also focus on reducing the toll of heart valve disease by addressing barriers to care. So one example, again this month, we will be taking part in a workshop at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, which is part of NIH. And the workshop will focus on research, identifying needs, gaps, and priorities for heart valve disease research in the future. In terms of that workshop, please stay tuned and check our website because we'll have a summary and highlights of what the research priorities are, and we'll have it on the website. We also focus on educating policymakers about the needs of patients with heart valve disease and how policy may impact those patients. And just recently, one example is that we helped form a really broad coalition of groups to ensure that all patients have access to all heart valve treatments. So really, in a nutshell, Heart Valve Voice provides a voice for people living with heart disease. That's many of you on today's webinar, and frankly, you are the voice. We are the organizations that can help facilitate your voice being heard. We really want you to be involved because you are our organization. Without you, we wouldn't be an organization. So please go to our website and find out more about the variety of activities. We're going to have a whole series of these webinars, and there are lots of ways that you can be involved, and we hope you will. So now, without further ado, I'm excited to introduce the moderator for today's program, Susan Strong. Susan is Director of Communications and Patient Engagement for Heart Valve Voice, and she's also the founding president of our board of directors and is, as you will hear, a very passionate advocate for patients. She also serves as an American Heart Association Heart Valve Ambassador, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that program from our AHA representative. And she's actively involved as a patient stakeholder in clinical research. So Susan, take it away.
Lisa, thank you so much. And for everyone here, again, just our warmest welcome to you. Thank you for being here. As Lisa said, we are your organization, and we truly hope that you find a lot of value as well as information and inspiration and support in our webinar today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a question and answer session. And at any point during the webinar, we invite you to, if you're using a computer, to type in, if you'll see on the bottom right, there's a, well, you know, I'm going to read what it says instead of looking. You can type questions in using the side panel on your screen. That's what I was going for. And you can click the question mark bubble on the right and just type in your question. And you don't have to wait to the end of the webinar to do that. If a question comes to mind while someone is speaking, feel free to go ahead and type it in then. If we can respond to it, then we will, if it fits to do that, or we'll wait to the end. But you don't have to wait to the end to type your questions in. And if you have any trouble at all accessing that, you can just email questions to info@heartvalvevoiceus.org, and we can respond to your questions that way too. We really want this to be an interactive webinar that answers your question and is great for you. So next slide. And we're excited too that we have 4 different speakers today for you. The first is Samuel Thomas, and he's the Director of Research and Communications at Rose Lee Associates. And Samuel, if you're ready, we'll just turn it over to you. Oh, and you know what? Before we do that, though, I forgot. I wanted to get in our great thanks to Edwards Lifesciences for sponsoring this educational webinar series. We appreciate that so much. Okay, Samuel, if you want to take it away.
Thank you very much, Susan. And thank you to Lisa and everybody at Heart Valve Voice for having me today, and for all of the participants who are here participating on the webinar. Again, my name is Sam Thomas. I'm the Director of Research and Communications at Rose Lee and Associates. We take a research perspective here, and one of the things that we have been working on is trying to understand what are the benefits of peer support for patients with heart valve disease, patients with other diseases. Really, does it help patients throughout their treatment journey and recovery, and if so, how? A diagnosis of heart valve disease comes with many feelings for many people. Many people feel scared, anxious, worried, and I think, we have 8 here listed on the slide, but of course, this is barely enough to capture even what happens in a day or an hour early in learning about diagnosis, treatment options. It really, for many, can feel very overwhelming. I know that many patients also have not met another patient going through exactly what they have, and the feeling of a heart valve disease diagnosis and understanding the treatment that you'll need can come for many as feeling very lonely and lost. But really, you are not alone. Heart valve disease is actually quite a common disease. It affects more than 11 million Americans today. And depending on the age bracket that you're in, the prevalence may be even higher. Older ages, there are greater risk factors, and really a significant number of people over the age of 60, almost 15%, have some form of heart valve disease eventually. At the same time, more than 700,000 Americans undergo open heart surgery each year. You are certainly, if you're facing this procedure, you're not the first to go through it. It's been around for many decades, and there are many other patients who you can speak with and connect to about their experiences. More than 100,000 of these are from heart valve surgeries, and of course there are other non-open heart surgery procedures for treatments as well. What we have found is that there are many studies that show that peer support programs of various kinds really do work and really do support patients in a number of ways. Patients who have peer support of various kinds before they enter surgery are more ready to go through the treatment that they're going to have. Before and after, patients who have peer support have stronger social networks, feel they have more people they can talk to, turn to when they have questions or things that they're struggling with. After treatment, patients who receive peer support are more motivated to do the rehabilitation that's necessary to really come back to your full capacity. And part of that is also practicing better stress coping skills, improved self-care, diet, exercise, and patients who have peer support also show reduced depression. Now, you may be thinking, I'm not really sure if this is for me. I don't particularly want to sit in a support group, or I don't have time to go out and to meet people. Well, there's good news. There are many ways to receive peer support, and we're going to hear from the other panelists in just a few minutes about what some of those are. But you can meet others in person. There are phone programs, online programs that you can do from the comfort of your home, group sessions, one-on-one sessions, really whatever you're most comfortable with, there is a place there for you. To take another look at the benefits, we see that patients who go through peer support have more realistic expectations about what their treatment will be like, and importantly, what their recovery will be like, a more positive outlook going through the entire process. As I already mentioned, better adherence to rehabilitation programs and improved feelings of social support. At the same time, studies have also shown that patients who are participating in peer support programs actually get readmitted to the hospital less often, have fewer doctor's visits, and feel less stress, depression, and anxiety. Now, again, I mentioned at the beginning that I take this from a research perspective, and what I've talked about is what we see in the scientific literature. But really, I think that the most important thing is that patients really enjoy and value peer support. Many patients simply just want somebody to talk to, and especially somebody who has been there, who has been through a similar diagnosis, treatment, recovery period, and see that it is possible to have a full life on the other side. And that, to me, is reason enough to be participating in a program like this. Peer support programs really play a role also all along the treatment journey, from right after diagnosis, before treatment, understanding what treatment will be like, through the recovery process, and many years into the future. Coming full circle, many patients who participate in peer support programs really feel a need and a desire to give back and join support programs as volunteers on the other side, something to look forward to. There are many resources available, and you have come to the right place today. Heart Valve Voice, hosting this webinar, really is helping connect you with lots of different organizations and options that are out there. We are now going to hear from 3 such organizations, Mended Hearts, Women Heart, and the American Heart Association, who each have diverse programs where you'll find something for everybody at whatever stage you're in your journey. And I look forward to hearing from them next.
Sam, thank you so much. As a patient myself, I think you really captured so much of what that journey is like for patients, from the beginning shock and many emotions that we experience at the beginning, and then all the way through, and as you said, to that great feeling of coming out on the other side and the satisfaction it gives to pay it forward and give back to other patients. So now we want to welcome Katie Bond, a friend of mine at the American Heart Association. Katie, we're excited to have you here. Thank you so much. And we want to hear more about what the American Heart Association is doing for patients.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk with all of you. So the American Heart Association has an online platform for patients and families that have suffered cardiovascular disease or stroke. We have conversation opportunities in about 26 different forum areas, and we'll get to a little bit more about that later. But I kind of wanted to touch on what we know about peer support. And when I'm doing this demonstration or this presentation, this is one of my most favorite topics and one of my most favorite slides, because it really helps break down what we find with peer support and how it can help somebody along their journey, their patient journey, or their caregiver journey. In some situations, we know that peer support provides informational support, so that sharing of experiences and information. It also helps modeling effective coping skills. And Susan is one of our members of our ambassador program, and so she does a lot of this both on the support network and in person with other people, sharing her experiences, really breaking down the recovery process and helping people understand what's facing them and how to move forward. There's also the emotional support opportunity that people are able to provide or give to each other, encouragement, reinforcement, and that decreased sense of isolation. So often it's just such a powerful feeling to have someone say, I understand what you're going through, I've walked that same road. That really just lifts a sense of loneliness on a patient or a caregiver. Then there's the one that honestly I can't pronounce, mutual reciprocity. We're just going to go with that. That's the shared problem-solving ability where the people involved, whether it's the person asking for the support or the person providing the support, it helps both of them. The act of giving of yourself and the act of helping somebody else elevates a person and helps you feel better about what you're going through. And then the shared sense of information that's provided to the patient or the caregiver is also of benefit. So peer support does a lot of things. Working those three structures, it really helps with increased confidence, increased perceived social support, increased positive mood, and understanding of self-care, which, moving through the chart, really helps the ultimate. Oh, go back real quick. It helps the most important thing, which is improved quality of life. Everything that we do is really based on raising that quality of life for the caregiver or the survivor. So that's things, there's specific tactical things that go with this: improved health behaviors, weight monitoring, diet, taking medications. One of the biggest topics on the support network, regardless of what type of patient it is, whether it's heart valve, heart attack, heart failure, stroke, it really doesn't seem to matter. It's that diet and weight and taking medications. Those three things are truly challenging, and medication compliance is a big reason that people have readmits back into the hospital. So having a forum of people saying, you know, we understand that the side effects are terrible, but we really want you to take your medication because you can get better. See, I take it every day type conversation helps with that in quality of life. There's also the improved chronic disease control and decreased hospitalization and mortality. Now we can go to the next slide. So we know a few things about outcomes and support because we've done a couple of research studies, and we do run quality of life research studies on the support network itself. And a lot of our members are very helpful with sharing their experiences with us. So we know that patients with cardiovascular disease or stroke do experience poor outcomes, including poor quality of life. And so support of patients with cardiovascular disease and stroke is often associated with improving that quality of life. Support of patients with cardiovascular disease is typically provided face-to-face by loved ones, especially spouses, who function as in the role of primary caregiver. And that role, too, a lot of times our caregivers come to the side and share the most challenging conversations with each other, really looking for support, because both sides of being ill, whether it's the patient or the caregiver, it's a really hard road to walk for everybody. And while loved ones most often provide support, they too need support and are often related to the burden of providing that care. So next slide. So I'm going to share a couple slides about our support. I'm going to share a couple slides from the support network itself. And this person is an actual member, and she's 2 weeks post-op from having had heart surgery, and she's sharing what happened in her world. You know, and she talks about things like, before I was questioning if I should just prepare to say goodbye to my children just in case. So we find that people really offer up the most important details in their life and their biggest fears. And the support network provides us with the opportunity to really help support them on their road. So next slide. And then this person was talking about, I had mitral valve prolapse and repair surgery. The ambassadors on this slide are wonderful and can provide some guidance. So he's talking about people like Susan, who have been really supportive and helped every step of the way. And then another person responded back, good luck and stay positive that you can get support and guidance. So really just kind of want to show again to you guys that the support network really does help walk that patient journey with you. Okay, next slide. So about the support network, I'm going to do a little bit of logistics on this. What you're looking at now is the home page of the support network and the little bit of the registration. So if you look in the right corner, you see the opportunity, lower right corner, you can enroll either through Facebook or through email. There is a log-on process that will bring you onto the support network. And we do capture a little bit of information about you so that we can provide a guided and tailored experience to you. So next slide, please. So when you first join the support network, you do have the opportunity the right-hand slide where you see the picture of me and it says join the conversation in your primary forum, you do have the opportunity from this slide to go directly into conversation with other people that have the same condition as you. You can also navigate through the top where in the top it says connect with people like me, and then survivor stories, national days and months to support, regaining independence, your questions answered, my support videos, the blog and news, or special forums. So there are multiple locations throughout the entire site that allow you to either learn more, talk to other people, listen to or read the survivor stories of everybody on the site. So that's the one area, regardless of what your condition is, whether it's heart or stroke, AFib, or you're a caregiver, if you share right there, then the entire rest of the community is able to go read what's going on in your world. National Days and Months to Support, we do take that opportunity to highlight things that are happening. So if it's Heart Valve Awareness Week or February's American Heart Month, whatever it is, we do have a couple things for you there. Regaining your independence, we use this as an educational tool, and the articles that are in that section swap out every month. Some of them are going to be heart related, some of them are going to be stroke, and some are going to be caregiver to match the entire body of the platform. My support videos, we use this as a video library when the American Heart Association or the American Stroke Association comes out with a new educational video. We do place it here so that our members have an opportunity to learn more. The blog is really tailored content that we provide of survivor stories or new science, anything that the AHA wants to make sure that the population receives or has the opportunity to read, we provide here. And then special forums, this is the area where you can get to know all of the ambassadors, including Susan, or you can leave them messages. We also have a special section here for hurricane support, since over the last couple of years, there's been so many traumatic events, natural events that have happened. We do recognize that in and of itself is something that our community members may need support with. So we have a special section there for hurricane support. So that really is the support network, I think. Next slide. Yep, so that's the support network, and I realized after looking at this that I did not provide the link to you guys. So I think, Susan, maybe we could find a way to do that if you guys mail the deck out or something to the attendees later on.
Yes, thank you so much, Katie. And actually, that is the plan, and we hadn't mentioned that yet. Later today, everyone who registered, in addition to everyone who's attending, will receive an email from us that will have links to all of the resources that were mentioned in today's webinar. So you don't have to worry about trying to write everything down. You will have links that you can just click on and go straight to the support network or the other organizations that are going to be coming up, as well as Heart Valve Voice, of course. So Katie, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here with us. And next we have Dawnette Smith, who is president of Mended Hearts. And I've had the privilege of meeting Dawnette on a couple of occasions. And Dawnette, we're so glad that you're here, and we're excited about the information that you have to share with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm having a little issue with my computer. It's kind of acting crazy, so I'm going to do the best I can. It's really an honor to speak to you. I have been involved with Mended Hearts since 1988 when I had my first heart valve surgery. I was born with a bicuspid aortic valve, so this has been a lifelong heart journey for me, which has led me in a lot of different directions. But when I went in for surgery, I was terrified, as some of the other panelists have mentioned. And I'm telling you, the gentleman walked into my room the day before my first open heart surgery, and he said he was a visitor from Mended Hearts, and he wanted to talk to me, and I was like, sure. And he told me he had the same surgery 2 years before, and he looked great. He looked like, I mean, he was dressed in a suit. He had just come. He was on his lunch break from work. He was playing golf, tennis. He was back to doing all his things that he enjoyed doing. And at that point, I thought, oh my gosh, I thought my life was over, but I mean, this guy made it through and he looks fantastic. I'm sure I can do this. So I actually sucked it up and went through the surgery. And I became involved with Mended Hearts at that point. It meant so much. I tell others that it was like having someone throw a life preserver at me when I was drowning. And I was able to cling on to that, and it gave me hope that my life wasn't over. And I was 40 years old at the time, so I had kids in school, and it was important to me that I survived that surgery. But Mended Hearts has been around since 1951, and 68 years, and we've been offering hope and support to patients, heart patients, men, women, children of all these years. We actually started working with children about 15 years ago, and started Mended Little Hearts. It's a project of Mended Hearts, and those families, the patients, the families of these young patients actually support the parents as they're going through, whether it's at when they're first told that their child has a CHD, but continuing on through the life cycle. And so then, we've had several who've now moved into the Mended Hearts side of it and into the adults. And so we follow them throughout life from birth to the end. We provide education to heart patients via webinars. We do online support groups. We have, whether you want to be called on the phone, you want to be visited in the hospital, which is how Mended Hearts actually got started, with a heart surgeon in Boston, Massachusetts, discovered that his patients recovered faster and were more secure in their recovery if they shared their experience with someone who was going through it or had already been through it. So that's how Mended Hearts was born and has spread. We have over 3,000, I wish we had 300,000, 3,000 accredited visitors who actually go in the hospital and bedside and talk with patients before and after they have their heart surgery or procedure, and answer questions for them, non-medical, of course, and refer them to their physician if they have a medical issue. We discovered that the caregiver is a very important part to the healing process to the patients, and we have started a network of caregivers. Actually, my husband is one of them. He's taken care of me all these years, and I mean, they know what it's like to take care of a heart patient, and they support each other, because we've turned the tables. I am now his caregiver because he's dealing with cancer. So I have discovered what it's like to be a caregiver, and I'm telling you, I think I'd rather be the patient than be the caregiver. But it's an important position, and we support them as well. We have designed education programs for patients. We have most of our training material is done in Spanish that we can work with both patients and caregivers. We also support medical institutions like hospitals and encouraging patients to go to cardiac rehab. There is a big need for that. A lot of times the patients aren't referred to cardiac rehab, so they're struggling on their own. So we do talk to them about that and encourage them to talk to their physicians about referring them to cardiac rehab. We do programs in taking their medication, make sure that they are adherent in their medication, in doing what the doctor tells them to do. It's pretty daunting when you've gone through open heart surgery and you're told you've got to get up and walk 2 miles in the hallway before you can go home. And that's one of the things that we have done. In fact, one of our members here in my local chapter has started a program in the hospital on the heart floor that he walks with heart patients. A lot of times, people come in and they don't have a caregiver that can be with them during the day. The nurses are busy, and he actually goes in and sits with them and talks with them on the importance of getting out and exercising. So we do a lot. We're involved in advocacy. That's kind of my cup of tea. I enjoy doing that, empowering the patient and caregivers to be their own best advocate. to eliminate barriers for patients. We encourage the right care at the right time. We've had, the issue of valvular disease and patients having a choice as whether to have open heart surgery as opposed to the transcatheter aortic valves. We've been involved in that along with some of the other support organizations that are here as well. We think it's really important. A lot of times patients are really a little bit nervous to talk to their doctor or request something or, ask something to be clarified. So we encourage the patients to be their own advocate. They can speak up and have their voice heard. They can get answers to the questions they have. They just have to be persistent and make sure that they do that. And like my mom, who's 92, she thinks that all physicians are up on a pedestal and that you never question them. So I've had to be her advocate. She's 92 years old and going strong after 2 heart attacks. So I've had to really encourage her to speak up and let her doctor know if she's having any pain or any issues, because she won't do it herself. They're royalty and you don't question a doctor. But it is really important that you feel empowered to be your own advocate in situations like that, especially in your own health care. Next slide. We do a lot of valve education. We have regional and a chapter workshops where we have speakers come in. We have done a lot of work in putting together educational webinars, especially on valve disease. We have a valve go-to guide that we have available for patients that gives them information. Mended Heart started a TAVR, transcatheter aortic valve replacement visiting program, along with working with Edwards Life Sciences. They have done an absolutely fabulous job, and so we now have visitors who can have had a TAVR that we can put in touch with someone who is either thinking about having a TAVR or is on the road to having one, and they can encourage them and answer their questions. So it's really important. We believe in getting information out to the patients. Mended Hearts has been around a long time, and I hope that it's going to be around many, many more, and I trust that it will. We make 400 plus visits with TAVR patients already, and we expect that number to expand as the access to TAVR increases, hopefully. It's a great organization. We really work closely with patients. We do a lot of work with the underserved. Along those lines, we actually moved our national office from Dallas, Texas, where we had been for years, to a little town called Albany, Georgia, and I'm going to be heading there shortly to our annual meeting. But we felt like we were not accessible to the local community where we were in Dallas. We were located in a high-rise building on the side of the interstate, and there were no signs that told anybody where we were. And if you didn't know where our office was, you would never find it. So now we are in a small town. We have great support from the hospital, from the community, from our really great Mended Hearts chapter located there. And our membership has increased, and we have started a new level of membership. So anyone on this call, if you're not a member of Mended Hearts, we have several tiers of membership for Mended Hearts, and we now have our membership is free. You can become a member with full privileges at no charge. And I think it used to be like $20 a year. But it's important that we reach the patients. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out that lets you know what's going on. We have a monthly award-winning magazine called Heartbeat that we're very proud of, that we put stories in there. Those come out quarterly. And we're just excited about what Mended Hearts is doing and what we'll do in the future in reaching especially valve patients, because being a valve patient, it's really important to me, and having a total of 5 open heart surgeries to work on my valve, yeah, I'm really interested in valve education and support. So I think that was my last slide.
Thank you. And I think a key part in bringing patients along that journey is peer support of patients helping other patients. We have another patient who's going to share about another great organization called Women Heart, and BJ Babcock is here. BJ and I have not met yet, but we have spoken on the phone, and I feel like BJ's a friend already. That's the other thing about patients helping patients is when you talk with someone else who has gone through this experience, a life-threatening experience with your heart, you have an immediate connection, don't you, BJ?
We
And
do.
so that's another really special part about patients helping patients. So BJ, we're so glad that you're here, and I'm going to just turn it over to you and give you the floor to share about how great Women Heart is and how people can get involved.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's great to be here today. Great to be on the webinar. As it says there, I'm BJ Babcock, and I'm a woman living with heart disease. And like many of you on this webinar, I am a woman with valve disease. It's congenital for me. I belong to an organization called Women Heart, which is the National Coalition of Women with Heart Disease. Women Heart is a nonprofit, and our meetings are always free. Our Women Heart statement is right there, which says that Women Heart's mission is to improve the health and quality of life of women living with or at risk of heart disease and to advocate for their benefit. And, you know, that's been our mission statement from the very beginning, which is like 20 years ago, and it still is perfect. It's perfect for who we are and what we do. I was born with the diagnosis of aortic stenosis, which is the opening of the aortic valve was much smaller than it should have been. I also had a bicuspid valve, which once again, it's 2 leaflets instead of 3. And like many people with my diagnosis, I have an ascending aortic aneurysm. It's really common when you're congenital to also have an aneurysm. I had my valve replaced in 1998 with a mechanical St. Jude's valve, and my aneurysm is being watched by my cardiologist for changes in size. I have CT scans, I have echoes, I have EKGs on a regular basis. We are repaired, but we're never cured. I think that's really important. While growing up, I never met another woman living with heart disease. I never had anyone to talk to, and I felt extremely isolated. And this is a long time ago. So I was diagnosed at age 2, so that was like 1954. I know it really makes me old. But going back, I was sent to a pediatric cardiologist at that time in Portland, which is pretty unheard of if you think back that far, but they were in existence. Well, growing up, I never met another woman, but the symptoms were very subtle. While I played with my siblings and friends, I also remember climbing up on the sofa and napping often. You often hear the saying that denial is a beautiful place. Well, I was in denial about my heart valve. I assumed that if I ate well and I took good care of myself, that perhaps I wouldn't have to have surgery. In 1997, when it became apparent that it was time for replacing my valve, I had many of the symptoms. I did have some chest pain, I did have some lightheadedness, and I did have shortness of breath when it came to walking up a hill. But because the symptoms were so subtle, I just assumed that I was out of shape. When I found out about my upcoming surgery, I was in a state of anger, fear, and denial. Not a great combination. And there was not another woman to talk to. To top it off, my mother had had the same surgery 6 months prior to this time and never fully recovered. So needless to say, my anxiety was very high. I had a complication and a long recovery. I had pleural effusions, which is the lining of my lungs were filled with fluid. I spent 5 months sleeping on a recliner because I couldn't breathe when I laid down. During this time, the one thing that I truly needed was to be able to speak to another woman. I needed comfort, I needed information, I needed feedback and companionship with another heart sister. Many years later, when I heard about Women Heart from a friend who lives in Iowa, who was already involved with the organization, I realized that I needed to create support for myself and other women living in my community. I applied and was accepted to attend the Science and Leadership Symposium, and have had a support group in Vancouver, Washington since 2009. Women Heart has been in existence for 20 years. Other than Women Heart staff in DC, we are all volunteers. We are trained at the Mayo, return to our communities to educate, support, and advocate for other women. The most important thing that we do in our support groups is to allow other women to begin to heal by sharing their stories. I think it's so important. We also teach women to learn to advocate for themselves. Throughout these 20 years, we have been getting together with other women to share our stories in hospitals, churches, libraries, coffee shops, and even private homes. I know for a fact that the women would not be as likely to share their stories if men were also included. There is something magical about sitting across the table from someone who gets you. In my support group of 15 to 20 women, at least 30% of those women are living with heart valve disease. And to me, that is significant. The thing to remember is that you don't have to do this on your own. You have other Heart Sisters who are more than willing to help you along your journey. You can go to womenheart.org to find out if there are support networks near you. And if you're interested in applying to attend the Science and Leadership Symposium, you can also go to our website for more information. Thank you so much.
Thank you, BJ. Well, we are coming to the point now where we have time for questions and answers. So if you are online with us live, if you would like to type in a question, if you have a question, we would love to respond to those. You can ask a question to the whole panel, to specific people, or about an organization. So feel free to type in any questions that you might have. And also, too, if there was any terminology that we used that you might not be familiar with, feel free to ask about that as well. I'll tell a little bit about my background. I had aortic valve stenosis, severe aortic stenosis, and that was treated via TAVR, transcatheter aortic valve, or transcatheter aortic valve replacement, sorry, 5 years ago this fall. So, and I had stenosis that developed from radiation treatment that saved my life when I had cancer as a teenager. And then as a late effect from that treatment, I developed stenosis. And getting involved as an advocate and giving back to other patients has been so meaningful to me. It's really taken something that was a difficult part of my journey in life and given it a new meaning and a purpose to go forward and help others. So Jackie, do we have any questions that I'm missing or?
Hi, yeah, we have lots of questions.
Oh gosh,
the first
going on. Okay.
I was wondering when patients can expect to see mitral valve replacement via catheter, as is currently done with aortic valve replacement.
Oh, that's a fantastic question. And actually, it kind of leads into our next webinar that will be July 24th. We're going to be talking about innovation and the future of heart valve disease treatment. So the person asking that question would be probably very interested in that, where we will have people who are cutting edge in that area giving us information about kind of what's to come in the future. My awareness about it, and Lisa may have some other information, is that the mitral valve is in clinical trials currently, but we don't have specific information about that. I might have some, yes, the transcatheter mitral valve replacement is in clinical trial, which I just said, and that multiple companies have different solutions that are under trial right now. So that's kind of the best answer I have at this point. But again, the webinar that's going to take place on July 24th at the same time should have a lot more up-to-date specific information to answer that great question. Got another one, Jackie?
Yes. The next question is, when will TAVR low-risk patients be able to choose TAVR over SAVR, since Medicare is supposed to approve it?
Okay.
Would you like me to answer
Lisa,
that
go ahead.
question, Susan?
Sure.
Whew. the short version. So, in the first place, we don't know exactly when the FDA approval of low risk patients being able to receive TAVR. However, it should be in the next several months. And in fact, again, good segue, when it is, we will be having a webinar regarding TAVR and some of this information. In terms of coverage by Medicare, that is, I would say, up in the air. We've just gone through a period. Any of those who've been on our, on our active grassroots mailing list know that we've just been through a process of advocating with Medicare to expand access to TAVR to more hospitals, which we've advocated for. And unfortunately, the decision they made just last Friday, or just released last Friday, was that, it may be able, through the decision, there may be some expansion to hospitals, but it is not likely to be very many, and certainly not what we had hoped. So I guess the bottom line is what I just said, is that the FDA approval will come out probably in the next several months, certainly by the end of the year. Certainly we will be communicating that to everyone on here and everyone who's in our database, and keeping you then up to date on the steps towards Medicare coverage. And one thought I had here, Susan and Jackie, is that we post all of these questions on our website, and I'm sure there are ones we're not going to get to, and then we can provide more specific information in the areas where we'd like to provide a little bit more specificity. This would be one example.
That's great. Thanks, Lisa. And just to kind of dovetail with that, to clarify too, for listeners, that CMS and FDA are kind of two separate things. And Lisa talked about that, but just to make sure that it's clear for everybody listening, that those are two different decisions, and that the FDA decision we're waiting on. And as Lisa said, we'll probably have a webinar about that in September. So Jackie, any more questions?
What activities besides visiting have succeeded in local chapters?
Oh, that's a great question. Each chapter is responsible for their content that they have at meetings. They usually meet once a month and invite patients to come. There will be a speaker on different topics of interest to the patients, so they can choose beforehand. We try to get them involved in a lot of ways, whether it be an anniversary. We send out the anniversary, or we call them mendiversaries, in each newsletter, that goes out with the chapters. Each chapter has their own newsletter that gives information to the patients in their region. But there are lots of things to do. We do heart walks. We participate with the American Heart Association in doing their heart walks. There are just a lot of things that are available for patients to do, and especially on the chapter level that's designed for the area that they're in. So there's all sorts of things. We also volunteer in other areas in the hospital other than in the visiting, to support patients. And I'm an accredited visitor. I have been one since 1993. And I also volunteer in the cath lab, where I get to talk with the heart patients who are going in for a cath or anything like that. Now I work on TAVR Tuesday. They do TAVRs on Tuesday, so I get to talk with the family and the patient about their TAVR experience and encourage them. But there are all sorts of things for the patient to get involved with other than visiting.
Thanks, Dawnette.
You're welcome.
I do see one more question too about asking if this presentation will be posted online after the call. And thanks for asking that question. It will be posted online on the heartvalvevoiceus.org website, and we will send out an email, a follow-up email with the link to that when it's available. So you will be able to do that, and you'll be able to share it with other people that you think might be interested as well. And there's a question too about if there are in-person TAVR support groups in San Francisco. Do you happen to know that, Dawnette?
I don't. I don't know where they are, just right on top of my head, but I'm sure there are some.
Probably that could be found online, do you think, on the website for all the
Yes,
organizations?
mendedhearts.org. You can go there and check that.
Okay.
I saw a question on here, if I may, that was talking about what's being done to educate new cardiologists on, what a patient expects. And that was a topic that was very near and dear to me, if I can answer that right quickly.
Of course.
I have been working with the American College of Cardiology in this very topic, and I mentioned to them, we really need to do a roundtable training session to the cardiologist on exactly what a patient expects their physician to tell them, and more on the patient side of and let the physician know early on that this is what they need to communicate to the patient. So we're working on that, getting a roundtable going so that we can educate physicians on that, and that's kind of something that I'm going to stick to and stay on top of and make sure it happens, because it's really important. A lot of them don't know how to communicate with the patient. The patient goes home confused and with more questions than they went in with. So we want to rectify that, and so we are working on that.
Thanks, Dawnette, and thanks for your passion about that. And BJ, I see a couple of questions that are related to your organization. Someone has asked, can we expand regarding the training at the Mayo, and how is that used in communities?
Everyone does have to go, if you're going to be a support network coordinator or community educator, everyone does have to go through the training at the Mayo. Well, more on that question. I mean, you do have to go through the training and return to your community. No longer do we have to rely on having a hospital alliance in order to reach out to more communities. Now it is open to all people. And we actually, I think we're at the end of our time for people to sign up or to apply.
Okay, BJ. And so you apply, and a person would be selected to attend the training at the Mayo. And how long is that training?
It is usually 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
People pay for their own flight to get there, but the rest of the weekend is paid for. All of your food, your hotel stay, it's all covered.
That's great. And then we have another follow-up question about that is regarding Women Heart. Are there local chapters or are they regional?
There are local chapters, and you can go to womenheart.org and look online to find out if there is a group, a support network in your local area. We do have some online support, but for me, my purpose was to go and bring something back to my community. That was my goal from the very beginning, was to go for training and come back and create that support group that I didn't have, that support that, I was looking for.
Right. Right. I think that's so common among patients, is sometimes we give because we've received it, and sometimes it was hard and we didn't receive it, and we want to give it to other people so they don't have the difficult time.
Exactly.
So that is great. We are coming up toward the end, and so we will send out an email with all of the links to the great organizations, so the American Heart Association Support Network, to Mended Heart, to Women Heart, of course, to Heart Valve Voice US. And I think that concludes the webinar. We're right at an hour. We want to thank everyone for joining. It's been a pleasure to do this, and we are going to be following up with you too. In addition to the links, we'll have an opportunity for you to give some feedback and share what your experience was like with this, and if you have more questions, anything that we can do to support you better, because as we've said throughout this whole webinar, this is your organization and we're here for you, and we will answer the questions that we received that we weren't able to get to during today's webinar, and we'll have all of those questions in written format for you as well. So, and again, the webinar is recorded and will be posted online and will remain for a long period of time so that you can share it, come back, listen to it again, and if you have questions and want to get information. So thank you so much. Thank you again, Edwards Life Sciences, for your support of our educational webinar series. We do have webinars coming up, as we talked about today, about the future of heart valve disease treatment, about living with heart valve disease, about the FDA approval of low-risk TAVR and the TAVR clinical data. We'll have another one about shared decision making and what that looks like to actually be an active participant in determining your treatment with your healthcare team. And then finally, in January, a topic about Valve Disease Day that happens in February and how to get involved. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your involvement. We want to encourage you to get involved any way you can and reach out if there's anything we can do for you. Thank you so much, everyone.